Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger of bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of Workology.
Hello, and welcome to this very special edition of the Workology podcast. This is our third annual series where we dive into the most innovative and interesting new HR technologies in preparation for the 2016 HR Technology Conference in Chicago. I talked to 3 different founders or CEOs in 10-minute lightning interviews, giving you quick insights into some of the newest and most innovative HR tech you haven't even heard about. Please welcome to this Workology podcast, Felicia Mogadam, the founder of Citi. Welcome, Felicia.
Thank you so much.
Talk us through a little bit about your background. We actually met a couple years ago at HR Tech, and talk us through your background and then how you got involved.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jessica. And I guess just a little bit about me. I have a master's in industrial organizational psychology. I did some work with Center for Creative Leadership, and I have a few certifications with executive coaching. And then I also have done some HR operations and directorial work at a previous startup company called the Video Hire. And I decided to start Citi a couple years ago, where I found, a great opportunity in the market. I think that the market is always booming, it's always changing. And I think that for me specifically, I really wanted to kind of solve my own pain point, if you will. And, one of the things that I was really struggling with was that I, as an employee, felt like I had a lot to offer. And I wanted to share, the knowledge, the talents that I had in a big way. And it's not very easy to be able to share that information easily. Especially, with organizations that are very large, they really just don't have the time to sit with every employee and figure out, what kind of talents do you have? Because by the time you get through every single one of those interviews, all of those people have new talents, right? So I think that for me, starting my own company in the HR tech space, there's a lot of problems that we were trying to solve, but specifically we wanted to find something that we could build that was both interesting to the employer as well as interesting to the employee, especially with the new wave of millennials that have come into the workforce. HR technology is shifting to where, how do we satisfy the employee as well? How do we keep them engaged in using and leveraging the technology where it becomes useful to them as well?
I like that. So providing resources and a platform for employers and employees to think about their development, skills, talents, and knowledge. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Talk us through a little bit about the platform and what makes it new and innovative.
Sure. So Citi is a way to share information that's both important to the employer and the employee. So if you think about, for example, organizational redesign and that kind of trend that's happening that we see with a lot of organizations moving from functional silos of departments and being able to share information in a whole new way by assembling and disassembling teams very easily and making the organization more agile. I mean, creating different teams from, different talents, if you will, very similar to creating teams like you would like a Hollywood production company, right? You have different sorts of talents. And so they often move from one project to the next. And that gets a little fuzzy when you're dealing with a lot of employees that are all on different types of projects and dealing with different people. And then there's also, new people coming in and people moving. So it's like, how do you manage all that information and trying to see how someone really performs? So Citi, first and foremost, allows organizations to create and disassemble teams very easily and in a very fun way, where you can actually see what people are contributing to each team, and the individual themselves is able to like keep track of their performance with each team that they continue to work with. So that's number one. Number two is where, you get into performance. So now that we're kind of unveiling what people are actually accomplishing with those teams, we're able to tie that information to tracking performance and being able to give and receive feedback really easily, kind of like you would, via social media, very fast, very quick, but also focused. And by focused, I mean, we're able to attach either skills or values or competencies that are important to the organization and important to each team to a specific piece of either experience regarding recognition or experience regarding development. So, kind of still providing that positive reinforcement for recognition to helping people grow, as well as pointing out specific areas of where they need to develop. And it becomes very clear and creates this transparency between the employer, the team members, and the individual of what needs to be done. I think finally, what makes this really different is that we collect this large amount of information that we receive every day. And people actually want that because they want to be developed, and employees want that feedback, and employers want to be able to see what's going on within their teams, be able to help them grow and guide them. But the third final thing is the analytics that we provide. So being a young company, the customers or potential customers that we're used to dealing with, we're actually customizing their own dashboard. It's exciting because we're able to kind of take a peek into different types of organizations and industries and see, what are the most pressing issues that need to be solved, and how do we answer, or create solutions for those pain points for organizations by adding analytics that help CHROs or executive VPs of, HR really make strategic decisions with the employees, whether it be in talent management, whether it be in talent acquisition, employee engagement, who to hire, how to create those teams, what skills those teams are, high-performing teams, what is the DNA of those high-performing teams or high performers. And it's really exciting because, the amount of information that we can really receive in this new way of sharing and receiving information across teams is very exciting for us.
I like this because you provide a very high level dashboard and metrics. So like you said, executive leaders, VPs, they can take a look and kind of get a sense of the level of engagement and performance across teams or the entire organization. But then for the individual performer, they're able to engage and showcase their skills and talents and their growth directly with that manager or leader. And that leader can also see their individual performance and development too.
Exactly. And I think that, again, like one of the things that makes us a little bit different is that we define performance differently. For us, we're not a platform for everyone. We're a platform for some of the more innovative companies that are more cutting edge, that are looking for, ways to kind of push the talent, challenge the talent to perform in a different way. So by that, I mean, performance is not defined solely by the individual. Performance is defined by your contribution to your team and externally, external teams, as well as, your contribution and value that you are providing to the organization as a whole. So yes, we have metrics that say, okay, this you as an individual are contributing in this way, but your performance is also inclusive of other factors and how your team is doing, how your external teams are doing, and how you move through the organization and how the organization is performing as a whole. So it becomes much more, selfless, if you will, like a selfless environment, kind of demanding employees to kind of push themselves to perform at a greater level, if that makes sense.
Another thing I like about your guys' platform, it's not just inclusive to employees. So if you're working with a consultant or a project manager outside or a group of contractors, they can still be part of the teams and communities and contribute.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we've heard from our prospective clients as well, is that one of our potential clients is an agency where they're dealing with very high-end clients, and they might have a team per client where they're dealing with the client's lawyer, they're dealing with an agent, they're dealing with, different productions, whether it be TV, whether it be, online, or, it could be anything. So if you think about how do you really collect information in an organized fashion where you're just keeping track of, just that stuff. And when you think about the administrative work that goes into it, Citi, kind of takes all of that headache out and provides this beautiful, seamless, cloud infrastructure design where people not only are adding information, but they're adding it in a way that they want to see what other people are doing. Like one of our case studies, I'll give you an example, saw that people were performing better because they were able to forecast their responsibilities by taking a peek into what other teams are doing. And that's huge. That's groundbreaking for us because you realize that the more transparency that you have within the organization, the more willing people are more likely to perform at their best. And that's the kind of feedback that we're getting from individuals. And I think that one of the things that we really consider important is how to build the software, not just for the organization, but something that's beautiful and easy, simple to use, where employees want to use the technology itself. So it's, the way it looks is actually very consumer-like. And we want to make sure that process is easy, so all that administrative headache is pulled out and really being, allowing people to focus on the work instead of, how to do the work, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it is a beautiful platform. I mean, you think about performance management and development and just career coaching for yourself. It's kind of a lot like going to the dentist, and you don't make this at all like going to the dentist. It is welcoming, and that's definitely innovative and something new. So if you're a company out there listening to this podcast that is new and innovative and fun and likes to sort of make your own rules, particularly around performance, you need to connect with Felicia. Where do they go to connect with you and say, hey, I'm down, let's talk? Where do they need to go?
Well, thanks, Jessica, for that compliment. And so if you'd like to reach me, you can visit our website for more information at www.sity.io, so city.io, or you can reach me personally. I'm at Felicia at city.io, so FELICIA at SITY.io. And, that email goes directly to me, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions anyone has and just connect and say hello.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today about Citi and all the really cool and innovative things that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. Thanks, Jessica.
I'd like to introduce Eyal Gorebsky. He's the CEO and co-founder of First Job. Welcome to the Emerging HR Technologies special podcast for Workology.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about my company.
Yeah, so first, let's talk a little bit about your background and what you did before First Job.
Sure. So a little bit on my background. So first and foremost, I am a second generation entrepreneur in the HR space. So my dad started a recruiting agency about 30 years ago, which gave me a unique background in the industry. I later graduated from University of Colorado studying finance. I spent about 4 years as a technical recruiter in an agency format. So I have a lot of experience kind of recruiting on the technical side, focusing predominantly in the aircraft engineering space. And and then I ended up pursuing First Job from there.
So how long has First Job been around, and then kind of walk us a little bit through, what First Job is, and then what the cool things that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I founded First Job just around 4 years ago, really with the aim of building a better experience for early career job seekers. What we found is that candidates less likely to use LinkedIn when they are kind of early in their career because they don't have experience, they don't have a professional network. So we wanted to build kind of a better experience catering to that audience. And so First Job's an online marketplace focusing on millennial talent. We've gained a lot of traction over the last 3.5 years. We now reach over 11 million active job seekers through our platform. We work with several hundred of the top employer brands who scale recruiting initiatives through our marketplace in North America, and predominantly focusing on the sourcing and branding side. Just around 12 months ago, we identified some key pain points through our marketplace and just generally in the industry, which inspired our development of Maya, which is our AI recruiting product.
What is AI? Walk us through what that is.
Everybody has kind of a different interpretation. There's really two forms of AI. One is actual artificial intelligence, which is a machine that's able to replace a human function. There's also a concept that is intelligent augmentation, which is really a school of thought around how can machines support human functions or augment human functions. And then obviously there's a lot of people who kind of claim to be AI where it's a bit more scripted. And we can touch on that in a bit. But when it comes to Maya is equipped with natural language processing, which gives her the ability to understand language, and machine learning, which gives her the ability to learn and become more intelligent over time, which gives her kind of the true AI. But in terms of how she's intended to be used within an organization, she's really serving as an assistant. So she's augmenting the recruiter function. She's helping recruiters be more productive and effective with their time. So we can touch on kind of how she does that in a bit, but I thought that might be a good kind of starting point for the discussion.
So Maya is a bot driven with artificial intelligence and based on who understands language and machine learning. I mean, that in itself, I think, is interesting, but can you walk us through some of the functionality and the different things that she's able to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of take a step back first to understand some of the pain points and kind of why we built Maya, which I think is a good segue into what Maya does. Starting with the job seeker side, when job seekers apply to positions, often they don't hear back from recruiters. Actually, some of the data we found is that 85% of applications go dark. So this is often referred to as the black hole, which can be really frustrating and discouraging as a job seeker. On the flip side, recruiters really struggle to properly manage their pipeline. So what we find is that just given the amount of applications that recruiters often see, I think the average metric is 144 applicants per position. It's really hard to kind of properly manage that, provide all of those touch points that are going to deliver on a positive experience for the candidate, whether it's providing updates, feedback, asking follow-up questions, et cetera. So Maya was really built and inspired by kind of that inefficiency that exists in the market. And what she does is she interfaces with the candidate to kind of provide those updates, provide that feedback throughout the hiring process, but she also helps the recruiter vet the candidate. So she's able to ask a series of questions, both scripted pre-screen questions and questions that are driven contextually by her analysis of the candidate's resume or profile. So she lives with the candidate throughout the entire hiring process to kind of serve as that always available recruiter. And she's also vetting the candidate. So there's a lot of insights that she's surfacing through that conversation that become very valuable to the recruiter. And so a huge part of our platform is not only the AI recruiting assistant who interfaces with the candidate, but also the platform itself and how we're able to aggregate all of that data and help recruiters prioritize their workflow through the tool and through the technology. And then Maya can do several things in terms of automating next steps. She can schedule the interview on behalf of the recruiter. She can deliver rejection messaging. So there's a number of different ways in which we're kind of utilizing the technology to drive that efficiency.
I love that she's able to engage candidates as they're applying, or maybe even before they're applying, but also after the application process and throughout, why they're going through the selection. I feel like that's one thing as recruiters and talent acquisition leaders, we never win.
Yeah, and it's a struggle. It's unfortunate because any recruiter you speak to will tell you that they're underwater, right? Or at the talent acquisition leadership level, how do you develop a process that enables recruiters to succeed in that way? It's really tough. There's just a lot going on, and so Maya is really, really there to kind of perform a lot of the legwork and ensure that those gaps are covered.
I feel like there's been a lot of articles written lately, at least I've been reading, about bots and artificial intelligence, but we haven't seen a lot of things happening in the human resource tech space. So for me, this is very exciting and definitely something that recruiters know that they can use immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have several dozen companies already using Maya. So she's already in production. And to name, well, we actually can't name the actual organizations, but we're working with one of the largest recruiting agencies in the world. We're working with internal recruiting departments. One of our clients manages several million applicants a year. So obviously a lot of value to be had with this sort of technology. We also have clients that are smaller organizations that have kind of limited bandwidth, limited staff in scale mode. So obviously there's a strong use case there.
Absolutely. So where can people go to learn more about you and Maya and connect, maybe to schedule a demo or just learn more about all the really cool things that you're doing?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd love if anybody's interested in connecting with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My name's Eyal Grayevsky. You can easily find me. I'm the CEO and founder of First Job in Maya. If you're interested in learning more about First Job, visit firstjob.com. And in terms of Maya, we actually have a separate website that provides information on the tool and a place where you can request a demo and more information. It's currently at trymaya.ai or trymaya.io. It's spelled TRYMYA.io.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today and talking about Maya and how you guys are disrupting the recruiting space.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for your time and happy to answer any questions offline as well.
Welcome to the last interview of our series for this episode of the Workology podcast on emerging HR technology products. I'm excited to introduce to you Brian Franklin. He's the CEO of Holometrics. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about your background because it is really, really interesting. So walk us through.
Okay, well, about 16 years ago, I sold my first business, which was in the entertainment industry, and I was looking for what to do next. And I actually got a call from my mom who said, "Why don't you come be a coach and work with me?" Now I was 27 years old. I said, "You must be crazy. I don't want to go home and work with mommy, and sing Kumbaya for a living. There's no way." And she was one of the first executive coaches. She actually helped to write and deliver the business training for Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits. She was the business partner that created the trainings for the E-Myth for Michael Gerber. So she had started coaching back when you said you were a coach and people would say, "What sport?" And so based on that, I said, "No, I don't want to be a coach." And she said, "Well, why don't you try it and see what you think? And, you can do it while you're kind of in transition to figure out what you want to do next." And I came to Silicon Valley and started working with CEOs and absolutely fell in love with the question of collective effort, of leadership, of how do you inspire people to be at their best and to come together to create that synergy where 2 + 2 can equal 5, 6, or 8. And so I did that for the last, I started coaching in 2000 and was really fortunate to work with some really phenomenal people. I was Reid Hoffman's coach at LinkedIn. I helped 7 companies scale from startup to over $1 billion by coaching their CEOs. So I got to see a lot of really fast growth success stories, as well as a number of, I was started coaching in 2000, so the dot bust was happening, the dot bomb was happening, and I got to see a lot of smart people make stupid decisions, based on what was happening culturally at the time. So I just feel really lucky to have learned so much from my clients over the years about what works and doesn't. And I started to notice that there were certain conditions in place when an executive team would make a prediction or a promise about the future. Hey, we're going to make this so much in revenue, or we're going to expand this by so much, or we're going to buy this company and it's going to have this kind of effect, or we're going to grow by this much headcount. Whatever the initiative is, there were certain conditions that would be present when 3 months or 6 months later, you'd look back and that actually happened. And then there were certain conditions where it wouldn't happen. And I started to track when an executive team was going to make a promise, whether or not they were going to keep it. And I think one of the unfortunate aspects of our culture, our company culture globally right now, is that we have a really short memory. And so when we make a promise, or we create a strategic initiative, or we say to the company that we're going to achieve a particular thing, by the time it turns out whether or not we've done that, we kind of forgot the conditions under which we promised it. And so I started to tie those together, and I started to be able to predict whether something was going to happen or not at the moment that someone would say it would. And, so an executive team would say, we're going to grow by X. And I would know that the conditions were not present for that to happen. And so I would say, no, I'm sorry. I know you're saying that, but that's not really going to happen. And my predictive capability got more and more accurate, to the point where the number one factor that really leads to predicting whether, when you say something, whether you're going to actually do it as a company, is alignment. And alignment, not just whether or not you're in agreement with your peers, or whether or not it feels like everybody's on the same page, but alignment specifically with 6 or 7 different factors. Alignment with the market forces, alignment with the organizational capabilities, alignment with the underlying motivations of the management team and of the leaders, etc. So I started Holometrics with my co-founder, Nathan Otto, who is the grandson of Bill Gore, the founder of Gore and Associates. And we founded the company so that we could give this sort of wisdom, this insight, to as many executive teams and HR professionals as possible, so that you can measure the alignment across these different metrics. And the minute an initiative is formed, and you can say, all right, I want to, our goals for the quarter are X, or our strategic initiative for the year is Y. We can measure using what's called a holograph, a 360 measurement throughout the organization, which is very, very fast. It takes, less than a week of calendar time, and every employee spends less than 15 minutes on it. And as a result, we can show the executive team what's the risk factor? Is it going to happen or not? And if it's not, where do they need to focus in terms of their own executive bandwidth in order to give that initiative the best shot of happening?
Does that mean that you guys might, using the technology that you guys have, you might make suggestions to add additional skill sets or competencies of individuals among the leadership team? I mean, what kind of suggestions does something like this make for executives?
Absolutely. So, if something's going to happen, like if you make a bold statement about the future, and that is going to come to pass, it's because of alignment, And alignment is expressed in behavior. It's interesting. Agreement is expressed in language, right? So you can tell in a discussion whether or not you have agreement. But alignment is expressed in behavior. So it's actually pretty hard to tell in a discussion if you have alignment. And I know that you've experienced this, where you think you're on the same page with someone, you have a conversation, you kind of look them in the eye, you both nod, you think you're aligned, and then 2 weeks later you notice that what you're doing is totally out of sync. So the kinds of suggestions that we would make would be that the strategy itself is not aligned with the company or with the brand. That would be one possibility. That you've said that you want to do this strategy, but the strategy doesn't actually line up with the momentum of the company. So either there's a bigger job of realigning the company, or a smaller job of realigning the strategy. But in any case, those two need to be lined up. Also, the resources that can get it done in the company need to be working on it. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard executives give an all hands meeting where they talk about the number one priority for an engineering team. And then when we look at the actual time spent on that number one priority, it was less than one person's FTE. It was like less than one FTE working on what's supposed to be, quote, the number one priority. So it's no surprise 6 months later when nothing's got moved forward, because it actually never got tasked. So we want to look at that. And like you said, capability. Do we believe that we have the capability to get this done, or do we need to reinforce that either with hiring, with consultants, or with shifting who's working on what? Is it aligned with reality? If we say that we're going to triple in size every year for 5 years, you might be able to do that as a startup for 3 years, but in the 4th year, it's going to be exponentially more difficult to achieve that goal. So, is it aligned with reality, with market forces, with the customers? When you are suggesting that you want to push a particular product, is that product actually what the customers want? And is the value that you say you're delivering to the customers the same as the value that the customers say that they're receiving? All those kinds of things are measured pretty rapidly, and so we can show you graphically in what we call an insights meeting where to focus, and then what to do about it.
I really love this, because I think every HR leader or talent acquisition leader is looking for, every business leader really is looking for alignment. But in the HR and recruiting side, you can come in, use your technology and your tools and your resources, and be able to position yourself as a true business partner, which I think is something that a lot of us are really trying to work towards in our leadership positions within our organizations.
Absolutely. I think it's been an unfortunate fact that the kinds of wisdom that the HR position holds are not taken into account enough in the most critical strategic business decisions, just across the board. And that one way that shows up is that the HR executives are often, not always, but they're often not truly treated as peers. And that breaks my heart, not just from a human level, but because I think that the quality of the decisions would be so much better if that kind of perspective on the human factor was more considered. One belief I've held for years, I actually learned this from my father, who was one of the founding presidents of AirTouch. And he said, most people earlier in their career think that the purpose of the employees is to grow the company. But as you mature, you realize that the purpose of the company is to grow the employees. That's really the other way around. Because if you're continually growing and developing your employees, then in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, the resources that you will have internally will be just so much greater in terms of what you can accomplish, because you've got a engaged and loyal and a growing employee base. So one thing I've always been looking for is what are those high value conversations that will bring to the forefront the kind of values and the kinds of things that the human resources position really pays attention to. And this is such a thing. The on the surface, the holograph is a survey, right? It's an employee survey technology, which has built in opinions about whether, how things get done, and what kind of indicators are the most reliable leading indicators of achievement. So it's the purview, since it's a survey technology, really of the HR department, right? That you'd expect the HR department to be delivering this survey to the employee base, and it's priced so that the budget of an HR department would make sense. It'd be comparable to an engagement survey or something like this. However, what it leads to is a really high value conversation that brings the concerns of the employees and the wisdom of the HR kind of mindset in general, and specifically the HR executive who's involved. It brings that wisdom to the forefront and introduces it as a crucial strategic factor and reveals the fact that without that kind of alignment, without the soft skills, then the hard results just won't occur.
So let's talk about where people can go to continue this conversation with you or to learn more about holometrics. Are you going to be at Chicago for HR Tech?
So unfortunately, I will not be in Chicago. There's a thing that we can't avoid that won't be there. We're going to be. There's a couple of other conferences, including the LinkedIn one in Vegas, but we won't be in Chicago, which is why I'm so thankful to be here on this podcast with you. But I really want to talk to any HR executives who want to play a role in driving alignment in their organization. And we're just starting. We've just launched the product. We have our initial, our first major customer is SAP, which they launch in a week. And so I want to talk to people who really want to play that role. And so we've set up a page at holometrics.net/call, where you can talk to Perry or me or any of the execs at Holometrics, and we can really talk about how you can play that role of alignment and of being the alignment champion in your organization. Of course, we can talk about the product as well, but I really want to help you guys. So that we set up this call specifically for this podcast, just as a kind of a gift to your listeners. So that's at Holometrics, which is HOLOMETRICS.net/call. And that's how we can follow up. And there's one last thing I wanted to say, because I know a lot of your listeners are recruiters. There's an application of this which I think has been really exciting, and it's the way that SAP is using it, and a way that some others have been approached us wanting to use it. And when someone is hired into a new executive position, either there's been a change, they've been promoted from within, or they're coming in from the outside. At a high level, usually that change of leadership represents also a change in philosophy. The new person coming in wants to make certain changes to the way things are done to make sure that their leadership and their impact is felt. It's very rare that people are hired at a high level to just continue what the outgoing person did. Usually there was either a problem or there needs to be a shift or an upgrade. And so pretty early in the tenure of a new executive, there are these brand new initiatives. And particularly if the person's coming in from the outside, the brand new executive has no idea whether those new initiatives are going to be in alignment with the organization. They have no idea where the pockets of resistance will be. And normally the first 6 months to a year is discovering, where's my new thinking a natural fit with this new culture, and where is it kind of at odds, and I have to either adjust my thinking or adjust the culture. So we're using the holograph to shorten that period from 6 to 9 months down to 6 weeks or less. So when a new person comes in, they can describe their initiatives and run the holograph and find out exactly where in the organization there is alignment and where there's resistance, and start to work on it directly and collaboratively.
I am excited, and I'm excited to have more conversations about this with you. And I think that most of our podcast listeners are probably dealing with challenges similar to what you're describing in their workplaces. So thank you, Brian, for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, and have fun in Chicago, and we'll see you on the other side.
Awesome. And thanks to you, listener, for joining this special Workology podcast hosted by me, Jessica Miller-Merrill, where we discuss the art and science of the workplace, HR, and recruitment. Until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our previous Workology podcast episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.